That rainy afternoon in Hyde Park felt like a blank canvas, ready to be filled with the colors and textures of the life that surrounded me. As a photographer, I always looked for inspiration in the most unexpected places, and the park in the rain was one of those magical places where the ordinary turned into something extraordinary. I put on my boots and put on my thickest coat. The camera hanging around my neck was almost an extension of my body. Raindrops fell like tiny diamonds on the leaves and lawn, and I felt a growing excitement as I walked through the wet alleys. Under a tree, partially protected from the rain, stood a man. He seemed oblivious to the world, lost in thought. Something about his distant gaze and the way his shoulders were slightly hunched caught my eye. I approached slowly, trying not to disturb that moment of introspection. "Excuse me," I said, my voice almost muffled by the sound of the rain. "Do you mind if I take a picture?" He looked up, surprised, and for a brief moment our gazes met. There was something enigmatic and attractive about him, as if he was carrying a secret too heavy to be shared. "Of course," he replied with a shy smile. "I don't care." I moved a little closer and raised the camera, adjusting the focus. Every detail seemed perfect. The soft light filtered through the clouds, the drops of water trickling down the leaves around him, and that deep, mysterious look. After a few shots, I put the camera down and smiled. "Thank you. I think I managed to capture something special." "I thank you," he replied, still with that shy smile. "It's not every day that someone asks to take a picture of me." "My name is Hillary," I said, holding out my hand. "James," he replied, shaking my hand firmly. His touch was warm despite the coldness of the day. "What brought you here that rainy afternoon, Hillary?" "Looking for inspiration," I admitted. "Rain changes everything, don't you think? What about you, James? What are you doing here?" "Me, I just needed some time to think," he said, looking away. "Sometimes rain helps to clear the mind." We talked for a few more minutes, discovering small fragments of each other. There was a growing complicity, as if we shared an unspoken secret. The rain began to subside, and the silence between us was comfortable, almost intimate. Suddenly, without thinking, we approached, and our lips met. The kiss was gentle at first, but soon became more intense, charged with an emotion I didn't know existed in me. When we finally parted, we were both gasping, our hearts racing. I need to go," James said abruptly, taking a step back. There was a restlessness in his eyes that wasn't there before. "I'm sorry, Hillary, but I have to go." "Wait," I asked, trying to understand what had changed so suddenly. "What happened? Is everything okay?" "I just need some time," he replied, already starting to walk away. "I hope to see you again, Hillary. Bye." I stood there, watching as he sped away, disappearing into the trees of the park. My heart was still pounding, and I felt torn between the emotion of that kiss and James's sudden goodbye. Something in him attracted me in an irresistible way, but there was also a shadow, a secret that I could feel but not understand. The rainy afternoon in Hyde Park then turned into an unforgettable moment that would change my life forever. And there, under that tree, I promised myself that I would find out more about the enigmatic James and what he was hiding. That rainy afternoon in Hyde Park couldn't get out of my head. The kiss I exchanged with James was something I had never experienced. There was an intensity, a connection that drew me back to the park, as if an invisible magnet pulled me. I decided to return, hoping to meet him again. As soon as I entered the park, my mind was in turmoil. Every shadow, every movement made me think it was him. The rain had ceased, but the smell of wet earth still hung in the air. I walked to the tree where we first met, my heart pounding in my chest. "Will he come?" I thought as I sat on the bench nearby. The wait seemed endless, each minute dragging on like an eternity. It was then that I saw him, emerging from nowhere, as if the universe had heard my desire. "Hillary?" His voice was soft but full of surprise. "James!" I got up quickly, my face lighting up with a smile. "I couldn't stop thinking about you. I needed to come back here." He smiled, but there was a shadow in his eyes that I couldn't ignore. "I also thought a lot about you. Looks like we got something special." We spent the afternoon together, walking through the park, talking about everything and nothing. I discovered that we shared a love of photography and literature. He told me about his favorite books, and I talked about my photo projects. With each word, I felt more connected to him, but that shadow in his eyes lingered. "Hilary, you're an amazing person," he said as we sat by the lake. "But there are things about me that you don't know." "Like what?" I asked, trying to sound casual but feeling my heart tighten. He looked away, focusing on the horizon. "Nothing that matters now. Let's just enjoy this moment." The vague answer made me uneasy, but I decided not to press. We would exchange phone numbers before saying goodbye, and the promise to communicate frequently gave me hope. That night, as we typed messages to each other, I felt something was about to happen. Our dialogues were full of affection, but there was an underlying tension that I couldn't ignore. A few days later, James invited me to a romantic dinner. We chose a cozy restaurant with soft lights and music in the background. The atmosphere was perfect, and for a moment, I managed to forget my worries. "You look beautiful," he said, his eyes fixed on mine. "Thank you, James. You look very elegant too," I replied, smiling. We talked about our days, laughed and had fun. But in the middle of dinner, James's phone rang. He looked at the screen and his countenance changed instantly. He answered the call, getting up from the table. "I need to attend to that." "Sorry," he muttered, walking away. I watched him from a distance, noticing the tension in his body as he spoke. When he returned, his face was pale, and he sat in silence for a moment. "James, is everything okay?" I asked, worried. He took a deep breath, trying to regain his composure. "Yes, everything is fine, barely work issues." I tried to believe it, but I knew there was more to that story. The evening ended strangely with a quick kiss and a hasty farewell. As I walked home, my heart was divided. I was in love with James, but that feeling that he was hiding something was eating away at me from the inside. I needed to know the truth, but I was afraid of what I might find out. The next few weeks would be decisive, and I was prepared to face anything for this love that seemed destined, but at the same time threatened by shadows that I did not yet understand. The secret of James. It was a grey morning when I decided that I could no longer live with so many uncertainties. James was like a riddle, and I needed to decipher it. His evasive attitudes and the way he changed the subject whenever I tried to learn more about his past, all of this made me uneasy. I grabbed my laptop and started searching. The name James was common, of course, but with a few clues he had let slip in our conversations, I managed to narrow down the search. I found out that James was involved in a mysterious incident a few years ago, something that involved a bar fight and an unsolved disappearance. My heart sank as I read the details, but something inside me still believed in him. I needed to know the truth, and only he could give me that. That night I called James to my house. He arrived, as always, with that charming smile, but I could see that something in his eyes was different. It was time to confront him. "James, we need to talk," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. He frowned, visibly worried. "What is it, Hilary?" I took a deep breath before answering, trying to stay calm. "I've been researching you. I found some stuff, things that don't make sense. Can you explain me?" He sighed deeply, as if he had already waited for this. His eyes met mine, filled with a sadness I hadn't seen before. "I knew that day would come," he said, sitting down on the couch. "Hilary, I'm not who you think I am." My heart raced. His words echoed in my mind as I waited for him to continue. "A few years ago, I was involved in an incident. It was a fight in a bar, something that shouldn't have happened. But things got out of hand, and one person disappeared. It wasn't my fault, but it was there. And that put me in a dangerous situation. I could feel a mixture of fear and compassion taking hold of me. James looked so vulnerable, so human. "But why didn't you ever tell me that?" I asked, trying to understand. "Because I was trying to get away from that past, Hilary. I was trying to start over. But it seems that the past always finds a way to reach us." There was a heavy silence between us. James got up and walked to the window, watching the rain begin to fall outside. "I love you, Hilary. I never wanted to involve you in that, but now that you know, I can no longer hide anything from you." My heart was divided. I loved him, but what if he was putting me in danger? "And now what will we do?" I asked, my voice almost a whisper. James approached me, holding my hands firmly. "I promise I will tell you the whole truth. But give me one last night of happiness, one night when we can forget all the problems and just be ourselves." I nodded, feeling the tears pool in my eyes. I knew he was being sincere, but the fear was still there, latent. We decided to spend the evening together, trying to forget, even for a moment, the ghosts that haunted us. As the night wore on, we felt the intensity of our love grow. It was an overwhelming feeling, a mixture of passion and despair. We knew that a new day would bring more challenges, more secrets to be revealed. But for now, we were together, and that was all that mattered. "Thank you for believing in me, Hilary," James whispered as we hugged under the covers. "I will always believe you," I replied, wishing my words were true. And so, with the shadows of the past still hanging over us, we fell asleep, hoping that love would be enough to face what was to come. We walked hand in hand through Hyde Park, the place where it all began. The rain was falling on us, but I could hardly notice it. My mind was taken by the revelation James had promised to make. His face, usually calm and enigmatic, was marked by a tension I had never seen before. "We need to talk, Hilary," he said, his voice low and charged with seriousness. "It's time for you to know the truth." I nodded, feeling a knot form in my stomach. We stopped on a secluded bench under the crown of a tree that partially protected us from the rain. James took a deep breath and started talking. "A few years ago, I was in the wrong place at the wrong time," he began. "I witnessed a crime, a murder to be exact. It took place in the London underworld, where a powerful and dangerous organization operates without most people knowing." I felt a shiver run down my spine. "What kind of organization?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "One who doesn't want witnesses," he replied darkly. "They deal in drug trafficking, weapons, and other illicit activities. When I realized what was happening, I tried to run away, but they found me. Since then, my life has become a constant race to escape from them." James paused, looking into my eyes as if seeking strength. "I didn't want to involve you in this, Hilary, but now that you know, we have to make quick decisions." They never stopped looking. I was stunned, a mixture of fear and compassion dominating my feelings. "James, I don't know what to say. That's a lot to process, but I want to help you. I can't just leave you now." He held my hand tightly, his eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you, Hilary. That means a lot to me. We have to plan an escape, go to a city where they can't find us." We spent the rest of the afternoon discussing options, trying to imagine a future where we would be safe. We decided that over the weekend we would go inland, where James had a trusted friend who could shelter us temporarily. The thought of leaving my life in London behind was scary, but my love for James outweighed the fear. That night, as we prepared everything for the escape, my phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number appeared on the screen. "Look out, Hilary. We know who you are and what you are doing. This will not end well for you." My heart raced. I showed the message to James, who turned pale. "They know," he muttered, his voice full of despair. "They are watching us." "But how?" I asked, the voice trembling. "How do they know?" James shook his head, frustrated. "I don't know, but we can't give up now. We need to be more careful. Tomorrow morning we leave before dawn." I spent the night awake, thoughts spinning in my mind like a whirlwind. The decision to help James put me in a dangerous situation, but I couldn't turn back. The love I felt for him was too strong to ignore. The next morning, with a heavy heart and alert mind, we prepared to leave. Every step we took seemed to take us deeper into unknown and dangerous territory. I knew that our journey was just beginning and that many challenges still awaited us. But as I looked at James next to me, I felt a renewed determination. "We'll make it," he said, shaking my hand. "Together, we will succeed." And so, with the hope of a better future and the shadow of imminent danger, we set out into the unknown, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Still panting from the frantic rush through the streets of London, I stared at James with a mixture of fear and anger. The threatening message I had received minutes earlier still pulsed in my mind, like a constant alarm of danger. "James, did you know we were being followed?" My voice came out shaky but firm. He sighed deeply, his gaze charged with guilt. "Yes, Hilary, I knew it. They wouldn't give us a truce so easily." Before I could express my frustration, a sound of tires singing on the asphalt made us race again. The chase was far from over. We took shortcuts, narrow streets, and hid in dark alleys, but they were always there, like relentless shadows. Finally, we find refuge in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of London. The place was plunged into a cold gloom, with the smell of rust and abandonment permeating the air. James leaned against a pile of boxes, panting, and I noticed that his face was too pale. "James, are you okay?" I asked, approaching quickly. He tried to smile, but the effort was in vain. "I think I've been hit, Hilary." My eyes widened when I saw the blood that stained his shirt. "My God, James, we need help!" "No, we can't leave here. They're everywhere," he muttered, his voice weakening. While pressing on the wound to try to stop the bleeding, my cell phone vibrated again. Another message. My hands trembled as I opened it, and my heart almost stopped as I read the contents. "We know where you are. Your family is involved. Choose wisely, Hilary." The world seemed to revolve around me. My family? How could they be involved? The revelation stunned me, and for a moment everything was silent. I looked at James, who was struggling to keep his eyes open, and a wave of despair enveloped me. "James, the message. They say my family is involved," I whispered, more to myself than to him. He opened his eyes with effort, the pain evident in his expression. "Hilary, listen to me. You need to get out of here. They won't stop until they get what they want." "I won't leave you here," I replied firmly, but my voice sounded fragile. "You don't understand," he insisted with a desperate look. "If we stay together, they will catch us. And if your family is involved, this is even more dangerous for you." Tears began to run down my face. The pain of seeing him like this, hurt and vulnerable, was unbearable. "James, I can't abandon him." Before he could answer, my cell phone rang. The connection that would change everything. I answered, and a familiar voice echoed from the other side. "Hilary, my dear, I'm sorry about all this," my father said, his voice heavy with regret. "But you need to understand that we are doing this to protect our family." "Your family is involved in this, Hilary," he added, as if he could read my thoughts. "James is a threat we cannot ignore." Anger and confusion bubbled inside me. "Father, how can you do this? He's hurt, he needs help." "I know, honey, but we have to think about the greater good. Please come home. Let's work it out together." I hung up the phone, feeling more divided than ever. I looked at James, who was now unconscious, and I knew I needed to make a decision. Save the man I loved or protect my family. The choice I made in that moment would change our lives forever. "James, I'm sorry," I whispered, kissing his forehead with tears in my eyes. "I'll find a way to help you, I promise." I left the warehouse with a heavy heart, knowing that every step took me further away from James. But one thing was certain. I would not give up on him. No matter how dark the truth was, I would fight to find a way to save our love. Chapter 6, Hilary's Choice. The decision to leave James was the hardest I have ever made, but it was a choice I had to make to ensure the safety of my family. That thought didn't give me peace, but it motivated me to keep going. I returned home, where my father was waiting for me. His face was tired, reflecting the guilt and worry he felt. "Hilary, we need to talk," he said, indicating the armchair in front of him. I sat down, still in shock at the events. "How did this happen, Dad? How did our family get involved in this?" I asked, the voice trembling. He sighed deeply before he began to explain. "A few years ago, we engaged in business that, at first glance, seemed legitimate. However, we found out too late that we were dealing with a criminal organization. By the time we realized what was happening, it was too late to leave. They threatened us, and since then, we have lived in fear. James was a fluke on our way. He witnessed something he shouldn't, and to protect the family, they decided he couldn't live in peace. And when you got involved with him, my concern was doubled." My father's words were one blow after another. I understood the gravity of the situation, but my heart was torn between loyalty to my family and love for James. "Dad, I love James. He's not a threat. He just wants to live in peace," I said, feeling tears begin to run down my face. "I know, Hilary, but we need a plan. We need proof to incriminate this organization and get it out of our lives forever. If we can do that, we can save James and our family." My father's proposal seemed impossible, but it was a hope. We decided that I would go back to the warehouse to talk to James and explain the plan. It was clear that in order to save everyone, we would have to risk everything. The next morning, I went back to the warehouse. I found James conscious but weak. Their eyes flashed when they saw me, and I felt a surge of emotion. "James, I'm back. I have a plan to get us out of this, I explained, trying to convey the confidence I didn't fully feel. He listened intently as I detailed the plan to gather evidence against the criminal organization. We knew it would be dangerous, but it was our only chance. James agreed, and we spent the next few days planning each step carefully. Finally, the day has come to execute our plan. We infiltrate one of the organization's offices using the information James had to access the files. The process was tense, but we managed to collect enough evidence to incriminate them. As we were about to leave, we were surprised by armed men. "Hillary, run!" shouted James, facing the men to give me time to escape. I hesitated, but I knew I needed to do this to save everyone. I ran to the exit, my heart racing and tears in my eyes. I couldn't leave James behind, but I knew he was fighting to give me a chance. I managed to escape and ran to the police, handing over the evidence we collected. Days passed until I finally heard from James. He had been rescued by police and was recovering. The criminal organization was dismantled, and my family was finally safe. Months later, life began to return to normal. James and I decided to start over, away from London. We chose a small town in the countryside where we could start over without fear. The tranquility of the place was a welcome contrast to our tumultuous lives. Our love was strengthened by the trials we faced. The shadow of the past still hung, but we knew that together we could face anything. Our new life was simple, but full of hope and possibilities. James continued to recover and began working on a book about his experience, while I devoted myself to photography, capturing the beauty of our new home. Each day was a celebration of our love and the freedom we finally won. And so, with the past behind us and a bright future ahead, we move on together, knowing that love and courage brought us here. The road was uncertain, but we were ready for any challenge that came. After all, we had already proved that together we were invincible. Thank you for following this exciting story. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a like and share with your friends and family. Subscribe to our channel and activate the Tinkerbell so as not to miss any of our incredible stories of love, hope, and overcoming. We want to know your opinion. Leave a comment below telling us what you thought of this story or share a personal experience that inspired you. Remember, every story has the power to transform lives. Stay tuned for our next video.